It's time for the Volquest Podcast, where we dissect the biggest news items of the week.
Good Tuesday, everybody, and happy game week. Welcome into the Volquest Podcast, the Smoky Mountain Organics Volquest Podcast, East Tennessee's most trusted health and wellness store focusing on natural products. 3 locations in East Tennessee, one right here in Knoxville, 8018 Kingston Pike across the street from the Trader Joe's. Big week coming up here. Rob Lewis, Austin Price, Brent Hubbs, as you listen here to the Volquest Podcast. It's finally here, and a lot to be excited about, but also little game week treats. Friday afternoon, Austin Price, Tennessee finally got some good news on Bru McCoy. What a difference.
Yeah, no doubt. And Hubbard, you got to give a lot of credit to the NCAA, to Tennessee. Tennessee filed the waiver on the 15th, and within 2 weeks, the NCAA ruled on it and ruled him eligible. And, just a big shot in the arm to the offense, a big shot in the arm to the entire team to have him be a go, because he's shown enough flashes in fall camp, Hubbard, that, it would have been a blow to the team and to the offense had he not been eligible.
Yeah, I think you got to give a tip of the cap too, Rob Lewis, to USC for their Sunday afternoon release of, hey, we want him to be eligible. We're all for him being eligible, but it's not our decision. It's an NCAA decision. When the NCAA looked at that and went, well, it is your decision. You could make this easy if you want to. And I think that's part of the reason why the NCAA ruled fast on this deal. Is like, wait a minute, if you don't have a problem with it, why is it in our hands? If you don't have a problem, all you got to do is sign the document and away we go. So tip of the cap to the NCAA for doing something that's not normally done, Rob Lewis. That's efficiency and common sense.
Yeah, and I go back, and Hubbard, this is speculation on my part, but don't you have to feel like Tennessee was helped by how closely Danny White and Donde Plowman had worked with the NCAA over the past 18 months in doing the self-investigation? I'm sure there were people in Indianapolis that they have in the favorites list on their iPhones and vice versa that they're getting where they have really good open lines of dialogue. I have a hard time thinking that didn't help Tennessee.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. The other thing too, I think that probably helped as well is that Tennessee chose not to make this a real public deal, right? Like they didn't get into a public war of words. They didn't get into a challenge to USC. They just went, and this is Danny White's style, and some fans may not like it, but that's just a matter of fact and kind of who he is. But he does a lot of work and never tells people what's being done. Like you go back to when John Fulkerson took the shot in the face that he took in the SEC tournament. There was this outcry from the Tennessee fan base about why is Danny White not, going after, Florida. Well, he won't say anything because it's his brother. There was a lot of stuff that took place behind the scenes in terms of conversations that nobody ever knew about. And I think that's kind of how they work. And I think the Danny White, Donde Plowman worked with the NCAA on this deal and said, hey, here's where we're at. We're going to file this appeal and file this waiver because we cannot get, the answer that we need from, USC. We're going to have all this in place. We're going to have our I's dotted and T's crossed and send you the paperwork. And the NCAA, I won't say rubber stamped it, but for them to make a decision this quick, Eric, there was some pretty quick reviewing going on, which is atypical of the NCAA style.
Don't you think, Hubbard, that this just shows like when they want to get something done, they can just get it done anytime. Like that when they drag it out, it's just like they just put stuff on the back burner. This was clearly put in front of them, and they acted quickly on it. Where, as you pointed out, there was no rhyme or reason for how long certain things have taken over the years, not just in Tennessee, but other places.
Well, and I think that part of the NCAA's deal right now is that they don't have as much power, clearly, as they once had. How many people are losing transfer waivers? How many people are they ruling against at this point, denying some guy a transfer waiver? In the one-time transfer rule that's going on right now and the empowerment of the student athlete, whether you agree with it or you don't agree with it, it's here to stay. It's not going away anywhere. I had a conversation with Tony Vitello last week, and we were talking about it. He said anything that the NCAA or anything that's out there proposed that helps the student athlete in any way is going to get passed. And I think that's the case here where the NCAA looked at this and said, what's the healthiest thing for Bru McCoy? what's the best thing for Bru McCoy, Eric? He missed the previous year. There's no charges against him. Why do we need to hold Bru McCoy hostage from being on the field for any longer period of time than he's already been away from the field? And as a result, I think this was an easy decision and a good decision for Tennessee, because Austin is right in that here's a guy who's gotten better throughout fall camp and is a guy who on the field is going to be able to help this football team starting Thursday night.
I was going to say, from a football perspective with Bru McCoy, Austin, I mean, coaching staff is very high on him. As you mentioned, again, really good camp, got better and better each day, each week, playing in this tempo, playing this offense, but just his ability out there as a wide receiver. Now, he's not played a whole lot of football, and so it's not cut and dry to sit here saying, well, Bru McCoy is going to be maybe your best receiver or second to Cedric Tillman or whatever. He's got to go out and prove it, of course, just like they all do. But just laying eyes on him out there for the little bit of time that we did, and from what we're hearing, sounds like he can be a really nice weapon in this offense. So I feel like when the news broke, when you broke the news on Friday, that the Tennessee fan base almost had a sense of relief, like, okay, he's in the fold. But much like the Ramel Keatons, the Jimmy Holidays, the Walker Merrills, everybody else, Bru's got to go out there and prove it, and he'll get his chance on Thursday night and the ensuing weeks as well.
Yeah, I agree with that, Hubs, and I agree with that, Kaner. Got to prove it, much like a Jalin Hyatt, But I think what it does is it keeps Hyatt in the slot.
Yeah.
And I think he would have still played some in the slot, but I think they would have been pushing him outside a little bit more, and it keeps him in the slot where I think he has a real chance to make some serious noise. And again, you got to think Cedric Tillman, Rob, is going to get a ton of attention.
They're going to roll that coverage.
Yeah, they're going to roll that. So like early on, at least, there's the potential for Hyatt and Bru and whoever else is out there to kind of get some favorable matchups.
Yeah, and outside of Cedric, I mean, Tennessee doesn't have a guy that looks like McCoy. A 6'3", 215, 220-pound guy. I mean, physically, McCoy is very similar to Cedric, and in what we've seen, probably moves better, probably a little more explosive. Cedric has made his living last year just on beasting people down the field on 50-50 balls and out jumping smaller corners. And Bru looks like he can do some of that, but he also looks to me like he's got a little more wiggle, maybe a little more get off. Now, that doesn't mean he's a better receiver, but physically he's got some athleticism that I think, Cedric doesn't have in terms of explosiveness.
I think the big winner, Eric, is Jalin Hyatt. I think he's the guy who wins most with this news on Friday. And that's not to say Jalin couldn't, as Austin mentioned, Jalin can't play outside. But Jalin Hyatt has spent since January, when he came out of that bowl game and he made a decision to really get dialed in and locked in. He made a decision to be the best slot player in the country. That's his goal. His conversation with Velus Jones was about the success you have in the slot in this offense. Everything for Jalin Hyatt since January has been about the slot receiver position. And he's obviously locked in and dialed in the way you want a guy to be. So it's beneficial to Jalin Hyatt and to Tennessee to not upset that apple cart. Leave him where he is most comfortable, most confident, and believes in himself the most, and that's at the slot. And Bru McCoy's eligibility ensures that takes place. I think that's a win for Jalin Hyatt. I think that's a win for Alex Golesh from a production standpoint. And I think that makes Tennessee's receiving core really dangerous, because you've got three big bodies. You got three guys who could run. They do they do some things differently. But I think Jalin Hyatt's been so focused on the slot, I don't think you want to upset that apple cart if you can avoid it. And they don't have to now because Bru's eligible.
Yep, I would agree. A strong fall camp for Jalin Hyatt, a really strong spring practice for Jalin Hyatt, and he's kind of rocking and rolling with that mindset. Plus, he'll kind of have to come into his own. The opportunities presented for the slot receiver in this offense are aplenty, but he's not the same player as Velus Jones. Very different type of receiver. Bru McCoy is more of a Velus Jones type player, to where you kind of throw it out there and just see what he can kind of get on, third and short or whatever. So I'll be intrigued to kind of see how they kind of evolve into their own. And also, last thing on this, I think even though, of course, they wanted to play and now opportunities would be a little bit fewer and far between as the season goes on, I think it does take a little bit of pressure off those guys like a Walker Merrill, a Ramel Keaton, to where, sure, they want to play, don't get me wrong, but now they have a defined role when it's all said and done, come in there and give Tennessee some good snaps. So,
well, I was going to say, I think they want them to play too. Like, I don't think they want to do the 3-man rotation like they did a year ago if they can avoid it. So, hopefully those kids stay locked in, because it is easy to kind of get down when you know that part of your playing time could be getting snatched away.
Jalin Hyatt last year, that's a perfect example. So a guy that will be out there Thursday night is Bru McCoy, and Tennessee will be taking on Ball State. Rob, you did your scouting the opponent report way back in the summer, kind of breaking down each of Tennessee's opponents and going back and reviewing that over the weekend. Now, this is a team that's, with head coach Mike Neu, his 7th season, 6-7 a season ago, but 2020 MAC champions, a surprise team. But they've lost some players, including a 3-year starter at quarterback, John Paddock, a 5th-year senior, is expected to be the guy under center, Rob. And this is an offense that returns some weapons, but not a whole lot of production, even with that quarterback a season ago, trying to kind of start anew and build off not a very productive unit, only 24 points per game a season ago.
Yeah, just you mentioned it, Eric. They lost a lot, especially at quarterback. They have a transfer coming in. You would expect this one to go Tennessee's way in any event, but to me, this looks like just a perfect opener for Tennessee. I mean, I think, and I'm not trying to belittle Ball State, but I'll be surprised if this one is a game much after halftime. Just a lot of holes to fill. You get the typical SEC versus small school advantages in athleticism, and to top it off, I mean, I think Ball State has some depth issues and some experience problems.
John Paddock, a season ago, 18-26, 132 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, and mop-up duty. Mike Neu joined Austin Price as well as Chris Lowe on The Nation Sunday night. Here's what Mike Neu, head coach of Ball State, said on his new starting quarterback, John Paddock.
We'll have a new starting quarterback for us. Our starter from a year ago was, a 3-year starter for us. Led us to a championship, back-to-back bowl games, had a great career in Drew Plitt. But John Paddock is our starting quarterback. He's been with us now for several years, so he's worked hard behind the scenes to study the offense. And we're all very, very confident in John. He's a tremendous leader. Certainly excited about this opportunity for him. He's worked tirelessly over the last several years to ready himself for this opportunity, and feel good about John just going out there and running the offense and having some fun.
Again, that was Ball State head coach Mike Neu on the new starter, John Paddock, under center. And Austin, as you guys continue to talk with him, he feels really confident about his trench play, welcoming back a couple of offensive linemen that missed some time. He likes where they are on the offensive line. And he said defensively on the defensive line, Ball State is as deep as they've ever been while he's been there. So, of course, you got to win in a lot of scrimmage in any league, but, playing a team from the SEC like Tennessee is still going to be a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I think, he knows the challenges that Tennessee presents. The one things he's not sure of are what Tennessee's like on defense, because Tennessee's got a lot of bodies that either played very little a year ago or didn't play a year ago that are new, whether it be from, coming back from injury like, Juju Mitchell or help in the secondary or help at pass rusher. So I think that's his unknowns going into this game, Eric. This is a Ball State team that has went to back-to-back bowl games, has continued to, find its footing. As you said, had a really good year in 2020. They've got their question marks as well. So, I think and kind of, listening to him, it was pretty clear he's kind of stressed, hey, this is going to be an atmosphere. This is going to be something that can unravel on us quick if we don't stay and true to ourselves, so to speak. And I would expect Ball State to do what Ball State does.
Well, what I like about this for Tennessee from a matchup standpoint is I think Ball State's got a couple of receivers that can threaten you, that are solid players. I think one's on the Biletnikoff list. They're nearly 1,000 yards a season ago. They've got a complementing receiver to him who's a veteran guy. And I think for Willie Martinez, that's a good thing because you're trying to figure out your corners. Who do you trust? Who do you feel good about? You want those guys tested before you go to Pittsburgh. I think they're going to get some tests there. I think McDonald will get some tests, at the star position. So the one thing I like about this matchup for Tennessee from a growth standpoint, I don't think Ball State's going to line up and throw it for 350 yards or anything like that. I'm not suggesting that. But they're going to throw it a good bit. They're not just going to line up and try to run it because they're not a very good running football team. And so I think for a secondary where you've got a bunch of bodies, new bodies, Eric, that you feel like you got some depth with, but you're not exactly sure kind of where they all fit in and how they're going to fit. I like the fact that those guys are going to get challenged in some one-on-one matchups on Thursday night, which I think is good for them moving forward.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, Jason Jackson, 69 receptions, almost 900 yards, 5 touchdowns. You have Hines Taylor, a big target, 6'3", had 50 catches, 500 yards, 6 touchdowns. So, yeah, those are the 2 receivers you're mentioning. And that run game only averaged about 130 yards on the ground a game. They bring back the same guys, so it's not like it was uber productive a season ago. They're going to throw it, and so you'll get a chance to. It's not going to be a gimme. They're going to be tested. I'm like you. I don't think they're going to air it out for 250, 300 yards in this game. But Warren Burrell, a chance to see what he's got after an offseason. D. Williams, who shined at points and times during camp. Those guys will play. Of course, Kamal Haddon, where are you health-wise? Some other guys who are rotated in there. Christian Charles, first game at corner. I'm intrigued to see what those cornerbacks and see if there's any type of. There's probably not going to be any big-time conclusions after this game, but there will be as you continue to move on, as we spoke on. Pittsburgh's a big game in week 2. You got to start playing the guys that you trust a whole lot, and maybe we'll kind of inch closer to seeing that, at least in the secondary, after this football game.
How do you get to a point, and this is for everybody, how do you know who you can trust, though? Because there could be a newcomer that, you've not had in a real game situation. Are you going to feel the trust with some of those people against Pitt? You know what I'm saying? Like, coaches just are so creatures of habit. They fall into playing, the guys they know. But how will they know? How do you think they figure that out this week? Because I do think they're going to play a lot of players. And you're bound to have success. So how do you balance that going into week 2 when you're playing a Pitt team that, obviously is preseason ranked top 25?
Well, I think it starts with just the mental side of things. Rob, who lines up the right way, who runs the call the right call, and I think it's most important, Rob, at the left tackle position, because when you go to Pittsburgh, Pat Narduzzi's going to come at you from a million different directions in pass rush situations. So if you don't communicate at the left tackle spot, or if a guy has multiple busts on Saturday or Thursday against Ball State, that probably changes your trust factor a little bit, or it does for me if you're a coach, compared to a guy who, hey, he played well. Most importantly, he was solid mentally. So I think that's where your trust factor comes in, is the guy know where to line up first and foremost.
I think that's totally it. Maybe not totally. Maybe, 80%. Maybe if there's a freshman that has a couple little busts, but flashes athletically to the point where a coach is like, whoa, look at that. Maybe that, gets you graded on the curve. But I think by and large, it's just what you said, Hubbard. I think it's the mental stuff. Who can we trust when we go on the road that is not going to, make a mistake and strike up the band for the opponent? And I think there's a lot of that. You mentioned left tackle. I think there's a lot of that in the secondary where guys playing corner are going to be in a new spot. Tamarion McDonald has, obviously it sounds like he's been one of the stars at camp, but he's biting off a lot more than he's ever chewed before in his career. Being your starting nickelback. And beyond, Tillman, Hyatt's played a little bit, but, mentally, who's on top of things at receiver?
Well, I just think that's the key. For a guy like Jawan Mitchell, right? Jawan Mitchell's got all the physical skills that you want. I think if you physically put Jawan Mitchell out there and Jeremy Banks, you would say that's my 2 best linebackers. But is he going to go right one way and wrong 3, or is he going to go right 3 and wrong 1? Those are things that you're looking for on Thursday night to get an understanding of who you can trust and who you can't trust, and who, hey, you say, listen, he had too many mental mistakes, but he was good enough athletically. We need to get him more reps next week, getting ready for Pittsburgh. We need to tweak how we do some things with this player or that player to get them ready to play. Those are all things that you come out of Thursday night with.
You flip the script and look at Ball State defensively going up against Tennessee's offense, and it was a defense that was kind of middle of the road a season ago, 5th in the conference in points per game, 8th in the conference in yards given up. They've got some new guys in the secondary. They bring back some guys in the front 7 that are pretty good players, linebacker and Clayton Cole, who had over 100 tackles a season ago, linebacker Brandon Martin, who, yes, it was not a typo. This will be his 7th season playing linebacker for the Cardinals. Tavion Woodward up top, or excuse me, on the front line, 5 sacks a season ago. But as something that Mike Neu discussed on the Nation the other night, you'll hear from him here in just one moment. It's tough to prepare for the Tennessee offense. The tempo, it's going to smack you in the face. Here's what Mike Neu had to say about how he's prepared his team for that Tennessee tempo.
Tennessee does a great job of trying to keep you on the field, not switching out personnel a bunch so that you have a chance to substitute. So we know that, we've been practicing, versus tempo for a long time, starting back in spring practice, here in training camp, every day. So we know that's part of it, conditioning and, being able to play in the third and fourth quarter when you're tired is going to be a big part of it. But there's no doubt that we want to try to play and rotate as many guys as we can to stay fresh because, they make it's certainly a challenge with the number, certainly, basically running 3 plays a minute, certainly a challenge.
Really, any way you spin it, Austin, I feel like, and not to say that Tennessee's defense will struggle in this football game whatsoever, but it's just kind of one of those games to where, of course, you want to look sharp, you want to look crisp, but I think the Tennessee offense is just going to roll against this Ball State defense with that tempo. And, of course, having veterans like Hooker and Tillman and Jabari Small with an offensive line that returns 4 or 5 starters.
Yeah, in a perfect world, you get out there, you score some points, you put up some yards, and then you get some of those younger kids some run. Because, you just never know when you're going to have to turn to them due to injury, due to, whatever. So, if you want Tennessee's offense to come out and click. You go back to a year ago when they played Bowling Green. They kind of showed flashes, but for the most part, that was pretty much an underwhelming performance on the whole when you don't get to 40 points. So, can Tennessee, come out, take care of business, be sitting there at 35 in the first half, and turn it over to Joe Milton and turn it over to Dylan Sampson and turn it over to some of those younger wide receivers. I think that's very, very important. And honestly, I think it's important too, because what Brent just talked about with the left tackle spot, to continue to rep those guys the entire game and have them in there in meaningful situations where they're actually doing things and not just turn around and hand it off in the second half.
Well, Rob, I think this for you when you talk about the Tennessee offense, it's all about maturity in year 2. How much more mature is that group to play 4 quarters and to particularly play the second quarter better than they did a year ago in the opener? They were terrific out of the gate, right? 14 points, first 2 possessions. We're all sitting there watching them against Bowling Green going, holy crap, I can't chart a play. I can't keep up with anything that they're doing. Then they get in the second quarter, and they go 2 3 and outs, and Bowling Green occupies the football, and Tennessee doesn't score in the second quarter. And that was the start of the second quarter trend for Tennessee. That was a problem a year ago. Great first quarter team, average second quarter team on offense to below average. I want to see what's their maturity look like in the first half of this game. Can they put the hammer down out of the gate? Because their tempo is going to shock Ball State. But, Rob, can they finish a half playing the way they start playing the first half?
I think that thing's going to go away, at least against this level of competition, the second quarter thing. And to me, it's all about Hendon Hooker. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but, man, I expect big things. I expect a big year. The kid got better and better as the year went on last year. Anytime we've been around him in spring or here in the fall, he just seems like a guy that is absolutely, ready. Like this, the old cliche, this is his team. Heupel has been glowing about him, about, the command he has of the offense. I'll look for big things out of Hooker this year. Really big things. And I think that starts in the first half on Thursday night. I'll be surprised if they punt. I'll be surprised if they punt in the first half.
Be surprised if they punt. Be a slow day for Paxton Brooks.
In the first half, I'll be surprised if they punt.
Which means a 3 and out on the first drive. Way to
go. We've all mentioned some things that we're kind of looking for in this football game, and we'll continue as the week goes on. From maybe a player perspective, I'm kind of looking at these freshman tailbacks. They're going to get a whole lot of run, and if Tennessee goes out and scores a whole lot of points in the first half and has a comfortable lead, then you want to put in those backups. You want to get everybody in there. But, first true action for Dylan Sampson, for Justin Williams-Thomas. How do they run the football? How do they stack up in pass protection? On defense, Tamari McDonald, Rob, you mentioned it a moment ago, projected to be the starter. But, this is a new environment for him. And though I understand the competition's not what it will be a week from there, and then certainly in SEC play, how do you perform in that new role. Obviously left tackle. And Brent, this is something I want to ask you about. You made the comment last week that you're not sure if left tackle will even be solidified after this football game, but who's rubbing with the ones, who gets more plays with the ones, kind of, who's out there first, who plays the best. Those are some things from maybe a personnel and from an actual player standpoint that I'll kind of be looking for, as Thursday night progresses.
Well, no question. And I don't think they'll solidify the left tackle spot. I think they'll rotate those guys at Pittsburgh unless one guy's just clearly better in the Thursday game, or one guy clearly doesn't play well Thursday night, which you would not expect. I tell you another personnel thing that's going to be, keep an eye on is the punt return game. Do you walk out of the stadium Thursday night feeling like that's solidified and they've got complete trust in somebody back there to really be aggressive and play the punt return game, or is it going to be Trayvon Flowers fair catch? What are they going to be in special teams? You look at a year ago, Pittsburgh special teams had a chance to turn that game. I mean, they got the block punt early. Special teams was a real key factor in that Pittsburgh game in Knoxville a year ago. Where are they with the special teams in a return game, which was really good a year ago? So those are some individual things that you look at and you look for. I think the biggest takeaway in covering enough of these is you just don't pass complete judgment, good or bad, one way or the other on Thursday night. You look at the good things, you look at some suspect things. There'll be people going to the water cooler on Friday going, this is the best team ever. They're going to win 12 games or 10 or 11 games. And you have some people going, though, we'll be lucky to get to a bowl game. Fact of the matter is it's somewhere in between with this team, because you want to see how they grow from week 1 to week 2. But what do they give you that you feel like you can grow with on week 1? I think that's the biggest takeaway for me Thursday night.
One other thing for me would be tight ends as well, something we've talked about. The two veterans, what you got there. But Miles Campbell, can you take advantage of this?
You ain't finding a third tight end Thursday night, okay? That's just not going to happen. I mean,
what will you do in terms of
you
taking
play
advantage
two
or not?
Yeah, I mean, the opportunity's there for him, and we'll see. But I don't think that you're going to come back and go back to your punch list, Rob, Thursday night after the game and go, check. All right, we're good there. Check, we're good there. I think you're going to come back and go, a lot of work, or, hey, we're closer than we thought. But I don't think you're going to go and sleep easy on your checklist or your punch list of concerns based on what happens Thursday night.
I'm with Eric on a few things. Certainly, Dylan Sampson, do you see a freshman running back pop? I mean, just, does he make a play or two? Again, like, you're not going to check the box if he does, but does he pop? What receivers, not only, who shows up, but who gets to play with Hendon Hooker? Assuming that, it's out of hand in the third quarter, Hooker's out, who actually gets some run with Hooker as part of the rotation? And in that receiver rotation, Jimmy Holiday, Jimmy Callaway, Walker Merrill, what do those three guys do? I mean, those to me seem like likely suspects. I mean, I think we can all see Squirrel White having a package at least, or, having some kind of role. But Callaway, Holiday, those are the two guys that I think we all thought when they signed as recruits would have a chance to be players. And here we are 3 years later, and we're still waiting.
The one thing I would add to what Hubbs was saying about the tight ends is, you're not going to know for sure you have a number 3 Thursday night. But I think it's important that Browder and Miles Campbell play a lot, because this is a game where you can play them. And 2, because Jacob Warren's been banged up, and you really need him for those key games in the month of September, Pitt and Florida. So I would give him very little run to make sure he is good to go for the following week and then 2 weeks after that. But that's just me. I mean, I think it's the perfect game to kind of let them dip their feet in the pool and see what happens. And, it ain't going to hurt you if they don't play great, and maybe you find a little something, but ultimately you're keeping Jacob Warren upright.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, you want to be careful. If anybody's a little bit nicked up at those positions, you don't have depth, you got to get them some rest and get them out as quick as you can. The biggest thing with Browder, with Miles Campbell, is going to be where are they mentally? Do they bust? Because what you can't do is you can't turn the left defensive end loose and get the and Olay and get the quarterback just absolutely drilled. I mean, that's going to be the judgment test on them, Eric, coming out of Thursday night in terms of the old above the line they can help us now, below the line they're not ready. Not sure when they'll get ready type deal. For that position, for those guys, it's going to be about the mental side of things in terms of the pass protection part of it. Because Miles Campbell's as talented as anybody. He can run around and catch the ball as well as anybody in that tight end room can. It's just, can he mentally stay focused to do what he needs to do to keep the quarterback upright?
Yeah, and there should be plenty of snaps to see, a little bit of that on Thursday. No, declarations leaving the Ball State game, but what do you do with those chances? Because those chances might not come as the season progresses unless you take advantage of games like this. So
yeah, if you're a young guy, this is the one you better, Rob. This is the old basketball thing. Coach is going to give you a rotation. What are you going to do with it? And if you're a young guy, if you want to help this football team early in the season, you got to take full advantage of that on Thursday night, because this staff showed a year ago they're not afraid to playing and trimming it down and playing smaller numbers. You better take full advantage Thursday night.
Yeah, if you get, if you're a young receiver, a young anything, if you get 3 or 4 series in the second half, doing well is not going to guarantee you chances going forward. But I think what Hubbard talks about above the line or below the line, if you go out there and have a couple of middle bust, you jump off sides, you have a fumble, you lose a receiver, then I think you're going below the line and getting fitted for a scout team jersey.
Boys, it's a big week. It's game week. Tennessee Ball State Thursday. That's coming up at 7 o'clock, and we're going to have coverage all week long leading up to the Ball State game, and obviously plenty of reaction and stuff through the weekend. Congratulations to making it to game week. Tennessee and Ball State coming up on Thursday. And, that'll do it for this edition of the Smoky Mountain Organics Volquest Podcast. Remember, there are 3 locations in East Tennessee, including one right here in Knoxville at 8018 Kingston Pike. Be sure to follow Volquest on the YouTube page. Subscribe there if you haven't already. And sponsorship opportunities, always sponsorship opportunities. If you have any interest in that, please get at Brent. That is at volquest@aol.com. For Rob Lewis, Austin Price, Brent Hubbs, happy game week. I'm Eric Kane. Glad to have you guys right here with us on Volquest. Appreciate you guys listening, and enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, everybody.
You've been listening to the Volquest Podcast every week here on Volquest.